Hello, everybody, and welcome! Eric and I have finished up Eric's Blind Dream Eater campaign. However, you might be thinking, it's not finished on the channel. That is true. Just the way the cookie crumbled. Normally, I do this the Tuesday after Eric and I wrap a campaign, so it's like the day after. But there is a sealed deck building video coming out then. And we just had the new expansion. There was a new Parallel Investigator. Things are packed, and I can't really move my schedule around because I, work usually 3 weeks in advance. So we're here today talking about this, but we're going to leave spoilers to as minimum as possible. However, you've seen Winifred and Minh, their result. That video has already gone live.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, but for Charlie and Vincent, we're going to kind of talk in as vague as we can, but there might be a few slips just in terms of deck's efficiency. So we're not talking about the campaign at all. These are just the decks. Eric, why don't you start with your Minh deck?
First off, one thing I want to say for those of you who have seen the ending of the Minh story, I was surprised at the difference between these two decks because the Minh deck did so much worse than the Charlie Kane deck, just in general throughout the entirety of the campaign. And I'm going to go through it now, and I'd love to hear, especially in the comments, what your thoughts are on why it did so badly, or if I played it kind of incorrectly or out of sequence. But here's the kind of thoughts behind the deck. So first off, I got Eticophobia. Just if I failed skill checks, I took Horror. I had the King in Yellow, which hurt so much. What a painful weakness card to have. Mm-hmm. And that might have also been my deck, but that was brutal.
No, it's a tough weakness. If it hits at the wrong time and you're crippled for 3 turns, it's a nightmare.
Oh.
It's unavoidable for Minh, right? Because it's her signature, so.
Well, but we'll get to why that became a problem for me even more down the road.
Definitely.
So, Analytical Mind, Between the Lines, really, really good card. Also required in the deck, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. But basically, if you commit 1 card, you can also exhaust it to draw a card, and you can commit cards to other people's locations. Mm-hmm. So I decided to go with a very, classic Minh deck, where I was basically just all skills, very few items. Mm-hmm. So because of that, I ended up putting almost no economy into my deck, and I didn't really feel it. I was never at a point where I needed more money. So the only thing I actually had for economy, I think, was Crack the Case.
Yeah, I think that's all
that was literally my whole economy.
Yeah.
Really, really great. Basically, after you discover the last remaining clues at your location, you just get equal to Shroud value money for anyone involved. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I gave it to Justin, mostly I gave it to me, and it was fine.
Yeah.
Minh never ran out of money, in my experience.
No, she definitely did not.
This was a very late edition, but holy cow, do I wish I'd had it earlier. Hyper Awareness was such a fun card when I did play it. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, especially considering how low my economy was. I was shocked at how much I just got to burn Hyper Awareness.
Yep. To
just have huge, swingy investigates.
It is a very once you put it into play, you're kind of just it's like a tasty treat. You're just the value I'm getting out of this card is kind of wild, right?
Oh, yeah.
It just feels insanely valuable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I was really happy with that. I do have 2 magnifying glasses in this deck. I somehow keep magically losing this, and I don't know how.
Are they just sticking together?
No, it's gone again. Oh no, here it is. I don't know how it got separated. Obviously, they were good. Hilariously, I got them pretty much in pairs every single time I played them, so they just felt really strong. The fact that they're fast is ridiculous.
Yeah, crazy cards.
Yeah. So here was probably the biggest mistake I made in my deck, and the one that I stayed committed to, and I shouldn't have. And it was Wit and Green with an Occult Lexicon. So this interaction, I actually kind of thought I would be able to game the game and play around it and be I'm going to only activate Wit and Greens when I want the King in Yellow, when I can play the King in Yellow, and then immediately get rid of it if I have to.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'm going to hunt for the Occult Lexicon, which will give me Blood Right.
Yeah.
Blood Right, really good. You discard cards to deal damage. You draw cards. I didn't have a lot of card draw, so this just felt like extra card draw.
In theory, Blood Right is also where you're planning on spending some of those resources that you're not using on your assets and stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Also was technically a form of money if I desperately needed it.
Yeah.
However, Wit and Green drew me into the King in Yellow.
I think you resolved her ability. When it found a tome, you did 6 times throughout the campaign. No, not 6 times. It was 4 times. You did it like once per, and I think 3 of them were
The King in
yeah,
Yellow.
only one of them you actually dug out the occult lexicon.
And no matter how much you think you're prepared and ready for the King in Yellow, it always hurts. It always hurts to get rid of that, to somehow resolve it. Because you end up overcommitting to a test that you could have used those resources more split up on.
Yep.
Looking back on it now, I think this was a really poor choice on my part, because the funny thing too is if Witten Green gets the King in Yellow and then you get rid of the King in Yellow, what is Witten Green doing anymore? So this was a very bad choice. I should have gone with something else, and next time, if I ever play Minty Fan or anyone who has a weakness that is a tome, I will not be including Witten Green in the deck.
Yeah.
That was very poor
Or
planning on my part.
alternatively, more tomes and relics, like actually playing around that part of it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I didn't think about it too, because like in terms of physical objects, I had the occult lexicon, I had the magnifying glasses, and that was largely it.
Yep.
So often what I was doing was putting myself in a position where the King in Yellow was especially painful because I couldn't play more cards.
Yep.
So
yeah, and it kind of like you kind of wanted to hold like all of these things, and then when the King in Yellow showed up, you kind of dropped it all on the floor, right?
Well, and the problem with the King in Yellow too is the most common 2 symbols I had were book and wild card.
Yeah.
And I built that specifically to be around Minty Fan, and it worked really, really well, but it meant that there were times when I felt the King in Yellow come out, and what I ended up having to do was scramble to get 6 wild cards, which was terrible. Like, that is such a bad 6 drop to put down to get rid of the King in Yellow.
I also think that this is something that was a good learning experience, because I think you played the concept of a skill-based investigator very well. You were aggressive with your skill committing. When you had cards, you committed them. You didn't like wait for the perfect thing. You weren't Phoenix Downing it, right? You were actually just doing it. But the problem is that Min kind of needs you to do it. This is something that it was actually in your level 0 deck, Dream Enhancing Serum, which is when you draw a card, if you have, there's still one in there. If you draw a card and you have an extra copy of it, you get to put it into your hand. But because you were being so aggressive with your skills, it never actually triggered, right?
I think it triggered in one scenario, and it was bad for the rest of them.
And like, it's one of those things that, because I think you were good to be aggressive, but I think just what you should have had is more card draw to make up for it when you were without that aggression, right? Because you wanted to commit your skills, which I think is good, but I think that's kind of why King in Yellow also hurt like it did.
Well, and I was thinking too, there is that yellow ally who does card draw or something like that.
Yeah, there's Laboratory Assistant. When it enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards.
Yeah.
There's a new one that came out on Hemlock, which was put a curse token into the bag at the start of your turn and draw a card. Yeah.
I actually was thinking about Laboratory Assistant in comparison to Witten Green and being like, that would have been a better choice.
It would have been. I think it would have been a good choice. Especially, yeah. I agree with that.
Well, and it especially gets frustrating because the rest of my deck, I think, was built so well. So I didn't play her perfectly, I don't think, but I started off with going for Practice Makes Perfect, and then just having so many good practice cards. If you have not run a practice skill deck, I highly recommend it as someone who is afraid to play a skill deck, because with Practice Makes Perfect, and then with things like Plan of Action, where you get to mess around with how things happen, and it's got that wild card, and then it does a million different things, including drawing cards. You get Deduction, which just makes you feel so fast and so efficient. It plays into Perception, which will absolutely help you win an investigation as well as potentially draw 2 cards, especially if you're doing it from a Plan of Action. When you get Analysis, which is, there was at least one point in the game, in fact, spoilers for the final scenario with Minty Fan. If I had played an Analysis on a final thing, we would have possibly won the game. And I didn't. But just the fact that I could do all these things was so strong. And then the real MVP of this deck, which blew my mind on Minty Fan,
It's Long Shot.
Long Shot.
Yeah. Goes up in value considerably, like joining with Winifred as her number 2. But I also was very impressed by Long Shot in this campaign. It was a really good showing. And like, that's the thing that's kind of like I can see why you're like a little bit frustrated looking back at the Minty Fan deck, because there were moments of like brilliance in how you piloted it. But then like seeing like that the weaknesses overcame all those good things, it's like one of those things was just like frustrating, but those are the best ways to learn, right?
Oh, yeah. And I had so much fun with this deck.
Yeah.
In fact, I think if I hadn't been comparing it to the Charlie Kane deck I also piloted, I would probably be way more positive about it. But I had so many better results and so many more fumbles that I got to learn from over Minty Fan, when the biggest thing I needed to do was just accept that I had sunk 4 experience into Winton Green and let it go.
Yeah.
I needed to switch her out for something else. But one thing I thought about with Longshot, I don't think it ever actually came out in play, but Longshot and Analytical Mind.
Yeah, you can commit it anywhere. Yeah, that would be,
Just throwing bricks all over the city.
Min's got an arm that no one can compete with. Like, she's in, like, the Olympics for it. Her ability to just throw a brick around.
Yeah, it was so good.
You had one more practice skill, right, as a late edition?
I did, and I loved it.
Yeah, Eye of Truth. Unfortunately, never got to put it on a Treachery.
Never got to put it on a
Treachery.
Treachery.
Shines, but it was basically just like a promise of power that we used in desperation, and it actually, like, did it. Obviously, you don't want to spend 5 experience for a promise of power when you can get it for free, but it did do its stuff.
I will also just say, though, as another thing that you can hunt with practiced, it didn't feel bad, the idea of practice makes perfect, into an Eye of Truth in the wrong scenario.
No.
Because it's just a big win.
Yeah, and also, because it also goes into your hand if you succeed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I played Sharp Visions. They're good. That's all I can say about it. The 1 experience Sharp Vision, I don't know if there's a higher level version. I didn't want it. It was great.
No, there's not.
It's card draw, I think.
No.
No,
it's
just discover 1 additional clue, right?
Yeah, it's a deduction, but only for basic investigates. Yeah.
This card was way better in the first couple scenarios, but I still loved it. Persistence.
Yeah.
So good.
You never saw it in the last scenario.
I never did.
No. But, like, this did disgusting things. So, what I think was really nice is when we get to my deck, I ran Copycat, and it worked really well with Persistence. Because being able to shuffle your deck with Copycat kind of goes hard.
Oh my god, yes.
But yeah, no, Persistence also was really impressive. This was actually my first time seeing both of these in a full campaign. And they both, I think Persistence needs to be in the right deck, Min or Silas, but it is really nice. Honestly, Winifred would kill for it too if she could run it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I ran some Eurekas. I think they're good. I didn't hate them. I didn't love them, but I didn't hate them, and they were a great addition to the deck. One thing I did take, and I don't know if this is a player skill issue or if this was just the way that Min was running, but I had Pathfinder, and
So this is actually one of the strongest cards in the game.
That's fair. I'm bad at it.
It's so, like, what you look at it, and this is actually something that I think we can look at for the final scenario, right? You spent, let's say, once a turn you moved for like 8 turns, right? If you spent one of those actions to play Pathfinder, you would get 7 free move actions.
It's the worst thing is I had it in my hand at the beginning.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that it's one of those things that, like, it really adds up, because, like, the worst action you can do, but you have to do, is move, right?
Yeah.
Anytime you can move for free, it's like one of the most value actions you can get, and if you can do it once a turn, right? Like, because, like, even if you think of it, like, say you had those 2 in play, and you had spoilers for Where the Gods Dwell, you had 2 Nyarlathoteps and 2 Whispering Chaoses, and you could have triggered them. You could have actually been able to do them both in one turn because of the Pathfinders.
So spoilers at the end, I got all of the Nyarlathoteps and all the cards needed to play them. And yeah, Pathfinder would have saved me. You're absolutely right, and I didn't think about it.
And the way to look at it is, like, what turn... If you play it on the first turn of the game and you get a move action every turn, if there are 15 rounds left, you got 15 free actions out of 1 action, right?
Yeah. Then this was probably my biggest misplay of the game then, and
But I mean, honestly, there's a card. I'll show it to you, because this was a big learning experience for me, Travis, and Bryn. And it is, like, sometimes movement is one of the cards that is one of the effects that a lot of people don't really like. I think, like, when you're first starting, don't see the value in. So this is elusive. This is a card that came out in the core set. Fast, play only during your turn, disengage from each enemy engaged with you, and move to a reveal location with no enemies. We, like, never played this card, but this card was tabooed in the first taboo list. And it's because it's so efficient on movement. It's zero actions, 2 resources, move anywhere on the board. So let's just say you moved, like, 6 locations away, and you also disengage from the enemies. So you're essentially, like, getting 7 actions out of 1 card. But you don't see it until you like actually realize it's very powerful.
It also doesn't specify elite or ancient one either. So yeah, you can just leave.
It is one of those things. And I think Pathfinder is a card that if you don't understand the value of it, it's hard to like respect the value of the card. Because movement is boring, right? Like you see Longshot and it's easy to get the value, right? But not so much in Pathfinder immediately.
Yeah, that's very, very fair. But yeah, so that was my Minty fan deck. I thought she was really, really great. I really enjoyed her. I really enjoyed going practice and then having some innates, but specifically Longshot was really a big MVP for me.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
I think the deck was great. I think you piloted it very well in terms of what you were hoping to get out of it. But I think some of the complexities is where it kind of like, it kind of where it kind of dropped a little bit for you. But I enjoyed watching you play it. I think there was that one turn in Dark Side of the Moon where you like solved all their problems, and I was like super blown away by it. And I think that is what Min can do. People always say I undervalue Min in terms of her strength, but I think every time I see a Min played, she's like a B+ A- investigator for me, and I think it still just kind of holds true today. I think she's very good, and she has a high ceiling, but she also can have like a B floor depending on how things go. And we saw that high ceiling in your play, and we also saw, like when things go bad because of King and Yellow, it can really disrupt things. All right. No, I like the Min deck a lot. I like both of these decks. I knew we were going to lose going into it. I was hoping we'd at least get to the boss fight, but that auto fail. Okay. I brought Min to join in on...
You mean Winifred?
Yeah, so I brought Winifred to join in on Eric's Min. They're the same to me. Signatures are just the anything you can do better and the arrogance, which I did play wrong once, but luckily I was able to realize that and was able to go through. And someone also pointed out that immediately after I did the test illegally, I drew the auto fail. So it like balanced out.
Yeah.
The universe knew what it needed to do.
As some of you might know from a different video, Justin is now hyper Christian, and this was the Lord.
I actually don't know if that video's out yet. They're gonna see that. They're gonna that's gonna be news
spoilers,
to them, but it's gonna be great. I think like this Min deck, like your Min deck, this Winifred deck was good, and it did its job, but it could have done it better. And I think part of the reason, like with your Min deck, is I made some choices that were cooler over being good. An example, so first off, these were all my skills. So like I had like 1,000,000 skills in my deck. And I had, these were my non-skills. So like I was going skill crazy, but I never played a Winifred deck, that actually...
a Minifred.
Yeah, a Minifred deck that actually goes like 100% in on skills. And that was really fun. But for example, some of my choices that weren't great was the constant use of trying to get a Daredevil 3 aces trigger to happen. I like Daredevil. I think it's a playable card. But there were some things I did, like these Momentums, that is also a good card, but not necessarily something that you're really like going crazy about. I think like if I took out, like if we look at this and I like took out that, it would be a lot better.
I agree.
Do this. It's still like playable, right? Because like you don't need to like, if you hit the 3 aces, it's okay. You'll cycle through and grab the other ones. Go like this, also looking really good, right? But it's like you put the 3 of them together and you have like a weak spot where you have like too many skills that are kind of like conflicting with one another, right?
I actually really liked your Daredevils and your Mentums, but yeah, the 3 aces felt extraneous. Like these did so good when you didn't pull a 3 aces attempt.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like I did it twice and it sucked to miss them, right? I'm also playing Arkham to have fun, right? So that's kind of like part of it. Other things that could hit off of it, like Savant was also like another, it's a great card for Winifred, not great for Savant. Copycat was very fun off of Daredevil. Also, Copycat was just really good. I knew I wanted to do Copycat because I knew you were going to bring in a lot of good skills, and we took advantage of them. I think like this Copycat was an incredible combo with your deck. Really nice stuff there. Some of the usual bangers that you see on the skill side of things are Quick Thinkings. Watch This, which I used to just get a bunch of money. And manual dexterities, if, for example, I just upgraded these to their upgraded versions, I think the deck would have gone better as opposed to like the Momentums or the Daredevils or the 3 aces. Again, like cover one of them and things will look a lot better. I had some overpowers and a 1 of unexpected courage still kind of hanging out. The overpowers were for some of my guns. I would have wanted them to be something different, but I was here to fight, so that's what I was doing. We'll get to the subject of my ability to fight in the near future. But the last thing I want to talk about, Opportunist 0. So the upgraded version is now succeed by 2 or more to bring it back to your hand, which is a tiny change, but it makes it so much more efficient. However, with that said, these cards were absolutely incredible in this Winifred deck. It was, I think I only lost them, like I did lose them each scenario, but most of them were from auto fails, right? And the amount of cards this gives you was kind of crazy. I lived the fantasy. Pretty much all the horror I took, except for 1, and I was at 5 from the last scenario, was from cycling my deck. So I think I did my Winifred goal. I'll get to my weaknesses again once I get there.
One thing I will also say is that Opportunist plus... where are they? I think Opportunist plus Daredevil was an unexpectedly strong combo.
Yeah, being able to pull one of those off.
It was really, really cool to watch you put these in and then either have the Opportunist come up when you'd already loaded the thing so you were going to win regardless.
Yeah.
Or have whatever you pulled off suddenly pull the Opportunist trigger. The number of times you'd be like, I play all my cards, I get all my cards back, I draw cards. Like, it was wild.
Yeah. I also didn't have an ally in this deck. If I brought it like a Delilah O'Rourke, I think we would have had a much better shot. With that said, I do think my efficiency in terms of combat was actually pretty strong throughout this whole thing. We had 1 sneak attack. It started as 2. I had 1 dirty fighting, which I had a conversation with someone on our deck building video that dirty fighting didn't really fit. But I think as a 1 of, this card was great. It just got me so much value out of things and let me not use bullets at certain times. I was a little hesitant about it, but I do think that it actually worked out very well. I don't think I wanted 2, but I was happy with 1, and I was also happy to not build around it. We had 2 British Bulldogs. This is my first time playing these guys in a full campaign. Just let you shoot with your foot. Easy Winifred.
Yeah.
And then the 25 automatics, which also did really well, especially when I got the dirty fighting. They worked really good on this.
Well, dirty fighting was also interesting too because dirty fighting chained really well with long shot. It didn't come up super often, but knowing that whenever Justin had dirty fighting out, knowing that Justin wanted to do evasions made it really easy to know when to commit long shots, which was great. Like, do 2 extra damage.
Yeah. And then I had 2 lucky cigarette cases because they also work really well with Winifred. So, like, going back to some of the issues where, like, I could have done this, but, like, I've done similar things before. So, like, I always, like, especially playing with you, I try to do a little weird stuff as well. Like, if I upgraded to the level 3 lucky cigarette case. So, the difference, lucky cigarette case 3 is, in my opinion, the strongest card in the game. What it does... So Lucky Cigarette Case 0 is if you succeed by 2, draw a card. Lucky Cigarette Case 3 is when you succeed a test, look at the top cards of your deck for a card, draw a card of it, X is the amount you succeed by. So like if I succeeded by like 6, I would look at the top 6, put a card into my hand. If I was going really hard on 3 aces, I should have gone into Lucky Cigarette Case 3. So like, this is what I mean, like where things kind of like, the efficiency kind of slips in different directions a bit.
Yeah.
While I thought your clue gain was really good, I probably could have put another clue card in over something, right? Just, I think, to, like, kind of flex a little bit. But overall, I was actually quite happy with how we accomplished the campaign.
Yeah.
I think these decks were both good. I think these decks, maybe just in some aspects, if we want to get hypercritical, could be more focused. Or... in both of the cases of our decks, have an ally that did something.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have an ally at all. But this is actually something I've been building a lot of decks, and I get to the end, and I'm like, wait, I don't have an ally. It's actually become, like, more common for me.
That's very funny.
Now, should we go to a deck that has 1 million allies in it?
Yeah, so I'd like to reveal to you now the strongest deck that I have ever played. Easily the most overpowered deck that I've ever played. Anyone who says that this character is not A tier... in my opinion, is misunderstanding how to play this character. So, I played Charlie Kane.
Charlie was joined by Vincent, by the way. And this is the one we're going to, like, you haven't come out yet, so we're not going to talk about it. But yes, these decks were insane.
Yeah. So I want you to understand that I played Charlie Kane, and I played Charlie Kane as a joke. Justin told me, play a serious deck, play a joke deck. I played Min as my serious deck, and Charlie as my joke deck. I literally did not even try to build Charlie Kane remotely effectively. And what I ended up with is the most effective deck I have had on this channel and absolutely crushed it constantly. Was constantly in a position of being in danger of falling apart and never did that. Always nailed the landing and stuck to it. So with Charlie Kane, obviously you have 4 ally slots, and when you tap down an ally, you gain their skill icons plus 1. So you always start with Bonnie Wash, and you always have Burden of Leadership, which is not bad. If Burden of Leadership comes out at a bad time, like you accidentally draw into it or something like that, that's when it'll suck because you've probably exhausted all your allies and you might kill a whole bunch of them. But for the most part, if you get this card and you just have to exhaust all your allies, you just don't spend a turn doing anything involving skill checks. And that's not been the worst for me. I also had Obsessive, which literally never came up and didn't bother me whatsoever. I think it did come up once and I didn't care. I just discarded it.
I mean, most copies, most of your stuff is on the board.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You're very board focused, and once it's out there, you kind of have it all.
Yeah, I didn't really care. So I did end up playing an Ancient Covenant. Justin went hard on a Clue Curse deck. And
Bless deck.
A Curse... What are the words? Curse, Bless.
Yeah,
Bless. Curse, not Chaos.
No, not Chaos.
A Curse Bless deck.
Yeah, only Bless, not Curse. I put curses came in, but I was only a Bless deck.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I decided to put in Ancient Covenant, and it almost never triggered, and that was fine.
I mean, it came in only on the last scenario too.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And it was fine. It was fine. So I've chosen to reveal this in a weird way. So I guess I'm going to switch over now to my economy. Because I had some economy, but I didn't actually feel I needed a huge amount, and I was wrong about that. And I'm glad that I kept this economy in and even took Justin's suggestions on upgrading it. So I did have Voice of Ra, which felt good.
Yeah. Notably, we were playing Taboo, so it just was symbol tokens, so it would have worked with my Bless tokens. I don't think it did too much, but it would have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gave me extra dollars, and it worked really well. I started with the normal emergency cash, eventually upgraded it, which was great because I needed more card draw in this deck. I did originally start with 2 Take Hearts. I ended up keeping 1, but the truth is this deck was so overwhelmingly powerful that I never really felt a need to play the Take Hearts, even intentionally to generate more money as Charlie Kane.
And in all fairness, the time you did, you drew the Elder Sign, so...
Yeah, exactly. So, moving on to the important parts of the deck. The parts of the deck that should have been a joke and instead exploded. So, to go along with another card that I'll get to later, I did play a Chance Encounter. So Justin explained to me that thanks to the way that the function of the game works, there was a way to put something into play without ever having its negative show up in your deck as well, which went great for me. I had Calling in Favors, which was largely just a way to try and generate more allies and to do draw, because most of my deck was allies. This was basically a draw card, and a very powerful draw card that allowed me to control it as well as reduce costs.
Yeah.
So that worked really great for me. I had 2 Rods of Animalism. I loved this card. For my Charlie Kane deck, my goal was to have as many allies as possible in my petting zoo.
Yeah.
So I didn't have many humans. I ended up with more humans than I intended, just because of the way the campaign went. But my whole goal as Charlie Kane was actually to play creature allies. And largely creature allies that were flexible and could do a whole bunch of dumb stuff if I needed them to. And Rod of Animalism helped so much. So first off, Mysterious Ravens. I think anyone who plays Charlie Kane, play Mysterious Ravens. The fact that you can discard them to just gain a clue at your location and take a horror, so good. If it's early game and you can't quite power up your character the way you need to, just Mysterious Raven. Get that clue. Keep going. We were both flex decks, but I was kind of the clue getter.
Yeah,
and so
I was leaning more combat.
Yeah. Same thing with Stray Cat. Stray Cat was largely just there for the discard mechanic if I needed it, but also to tap down for a +1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, also just the general synergy. Even though you can get more value out of higher cost enemies, just turning a Stray Cat into something else, get a cost reduction of 1, isn't the worst thing in the world.
Absolutely. Spirit Familiar, mostly there to then round out Brain. So if you'll notice, I also kind of planned my cards around Book, Foot, Brain. Went really, really well. And then one of the most important cards in this deck, the card that inspired it all, Devil. And Devil was so good. Devil was a body. Devil was another foot icon. Devil constantly was taking off damage from me when it even came up.
Yep.
I think it only blew up once.
It only blew up once. Also really nice with calling in favors as well, because you can like move like 2 damage and then be like, Goat, go get me dog, and Goat's like, okay.
Yeah. And then it just pieced out and it did so good.
Yeah.
And once again, you're looking at this and you're going, okay, but how can this really be good? But then you realize that I have 6 allies, which means I'm potentially adding +6 to any of my skill checks.
As the floor.
Yeah. And then potentially throwing in a Bony Wash to retap the one I might need. And then just messing around. And I don't care if any of them die. I've got so many of them. I can just get rid of them. Now, this is the one that was going with a chance encounter that Justin suggested, and when it happened, it was so good. So normally Summon Hound's weakness is that you get an Unbound Beast that comes into play, that goes into your deck when it comes into play, and all this bad stuff can happen with it. A chance encounter, basically, Justin was explaining, breaks the trigger that would cause this to form.
Yeah, so like an example for people who don't know, let's look at like calling in favors. So you look at the top 9 cards of the deck for an ally asset and play it, reducing its cost. So you're still playing the card. And Summon Hound plays the card and puts that into your deck. Chance Encounter specifically says put that asset into play under your control. So you're not actually playing it, so you're able to play Summon Hound from your discard pile with Chance Encounter and not put the weakness into your deck.
So the other great thing about that with Summoned Hound was it also was this extra element of fixing Charlie's deck that I didn't anticipate and didn't expect. Because you don't want to be playing the Summoned Hound, you have an extra 2 icons to throw at a situation.
Or like in a treachery card that makes you discard stuff and it's just easy to get rid of it.
And you just get rid of it, and then you just throw it in. So I was easily able to get these into my discard pile quite regularly. And if you can get into play with a chance encounter, the strength of it. It's a huge 3 soak, which I guess I call it a huge 3 soak, but that's just because I was playing a bunch of garbage animals. Its ability to help you fight or investigate and take basically additional actions on your turn. Fixing you to an automatic 5 was so good. And the fact that it exhausted, and then with someone like Bonnie Wash, you could ready it. You could
ready it on its own action.
Was so good.
Yeah.
Because 6 ally slots isn't enough, I also played Miss Doyle.
Yeah.
Who ended up being probably my MVP of my deck, as much as I wanted it to be others. As much as I wanted it to be the Summon Hound or any of the garbage animals.
I think as a kid, for the last scenario with Summon Hound, campaign as a whole, though, I agree, Miss Doyle.
Miss Doyle.
Yeah.
Because there is no combination of these cards that does not assist Charlie Kane. Miss Doyle, every time you tap her down, is going to give you +2 to whatever skill you're doing.
Yep.
All of these are going to give you some weird combinations of skills or abilities, and then their special abilities allow you to basically tap them down and have a base to change your base level. So this is really good, and then the way that they replace each other and the way that they discard each other is also really strong. Basically, you can play one of them, accidentally draw the other 2, purposely put them in your discard, and then feel safe throwing one of these away to put the other into play. Once 2 of them are in your discard, you have all 3 of them. That's really the way to think of it, because they will replace each other going directly into play, which is incredible. Some other things I had in the deck. Perception. It was good. I was the Clover. It helped. It helped me draw cards as well. That was great. Promise of Power, because this is my favorite card in the game. I had some Liquid Eye Founds, which in theory with Charlie,
I think, they're really good. I think just like in that last scenario, again, you got this like really early and like you just never failed anymore.
I just never needed it.
Yeah.
But they also have 2 book.
Yes.
So there's never a bad reason to run this if you're a Charlie, because if you fail, it's good. And if you're feeling like you're not going to fail, that extra 2 is a good fix for getting clues. I had a Ward of Protection. I didn't need it. And I had one of the most important cards of the game. I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but this card brought me the greatest joy ever. Is it a good card? I don't know. Did it do exactly what I bought it for?
Notably, this also puts it into play. So that's probably why I recommended it too, because it also works with the Summon How, because it puts it into play. Mm-hmm. So it also does that too for the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this deck was really sick, but I think what's most important is when we get to my Vincent deck, I think they complemented each other really well, right? Where my Vincent deck could be really aggressive early while you were getting set up, and then you would be able to match that earlier tempo that you lost once you were set up. 100%. So it's like we weren't actually losing any tempo, right? And then I was able to kind of slow down and do my thing, which is why I think these decks work so well together, because they were like literally, I think, just like covering each other's weaknesses very well. Vincent Lee, the Doctor. I love playing this guy, mostly just because the On the Mend dance is really fun. I mostly did it just for me in this one, but being able to just ensure that you can trigger as many On the Mends as you can, because On the Mend is only limited by having an On the Mend in your hand. And as far as I know, when a card is in limbo, it's not in your hand anymore. So it's one of those things that I could be wrong, and let me know if I am, but like that you're able to like commit it, resolve the test, heal off that test, and then get the On the Mend right back into your hand, which I think is really cool.
I also liked it because I think there was one time you did use an On the Mend for me, and it was huge. Yeah.
So apparently, I forgot, you actually can't use it on other people.
Oh.
So I made a little oopsie there, but you know, oopsies happen like literally every time I play Arkham. For the last scenario, I brought in two Studiouses because the card is just like very powerful. I don't want to talk about it too much. I built my deck around Bless cards and Runic Axe, because Runic Axe has the Glory, which is really good. Runic Axe is probably a nightmare to have someone play with you, especially when you're new, when I just say like 4 random words before I attack, as I'm like inscribing my axe, speaking to it to do its thing before each attack I make.
I mean, I've hung out with doctors. I understand how it works.
So I did with Runic Axe, you had to grab usually 2 of these 3 down at the bottom, which is the ones I chose will replenish 2 charges instead of 1 each turn. And for each charge spent, you can spend up to 2 different inscriptions. So I was commonly spending 2 charges and inscribing it 4 times. The inscriptions that come with it are accuracy, you get +2 fists, power, you get +1 damage. I did glory. If it defeats an enemy, heal a damage or horror or draw a card. Obviously, healing the damage is really good. I had elders, where if you succeed by the shroud, you gain a clue, which actually popped off incredibly hard in this one.
Incredibly hard.
Throughout the whole campaign. And then Fury, which is you also deal 1 damage to each enemy engaged with you, which is really good in this campaign. Yeah. Now, people might be looking at when I get to my deck and see that I have like no way to seek these cards out. I actually have no tutoring. I have very little card draw. But what Vincent Lee does have is a Charlie that can make up for any slips that you might have. So this is what I mean when I say the decks really complement each other, because we basically like trust each other to deal with a problem when it comes up, or to catch up on tempo and if one of us is missing. I think I hit my Runic Axe every time.
Oh yeah.
And also that's part of the reason why I put in these Studiouses, because seeing 14 cards in the final scenario means you're going to see a one of the cards that you have, especially when you're running 2 of them. You also do have Bonesaw, so there's like a second weapon in there. So it's like kind of these things that come together to get it. But mostly, I had faith in us as a team, so I was able to be a little bit more chill about it. I did have card draw, though. 2 copies of Glory. After you defeat an enemy, draw 2 cards.
Which also made it very confusing when Justin would shout Glory with Runic Axe, and I'd be like, is it the card, or...?
We also had Toe-to-Toe to act as another weapon. This is how you can kind of like make up for copies by having temporary things that can kill things. We had Stunning Blows and Vicious Blows, because you gotta blow dudes if you're Vincent Lee. Those are the rules. We did a run where the rules were Travis, Bryn, and I each had to run these 4 cards in our deck.
Yes.
And it was one of the strongest runs we've ever had. Unrelated to this, but it happened to be one of the strongest. These are like, once again, like, when I say like trust the teamwork, trust the deck, these are tools that I knew I could rely on in the chance that I did not hit my Runic Axe.
Yeah.
Especially because this campaign has a lot of lower health enemies in the early game, and then when you get strong in your deck, it's more consistent. It's easier to get where you need to go. Onto my assets that were relevant for my plan. We had 2 copies of Ancestral Token, which worked really well for the first few scenarios. That bag was loaded with Blessed Tokens, like to the brim. I also had what was 2 copies of Wolf Mask, but became 1, with Ace of Swords becoming the other one. Just ways to make my fist like boost more consistent. Nice, simple stuff here.
Doctor's wearing with a runic axe.
Yeah.
Covered in ancestral charms. You know.
I had Jessica hide because she works really well with Vincent, and bandages because it works really well with Vincent to kind of just make my ability trigger more consistently. And because my deck was higher on its curve, I had 2 copies of Burning the Midnight Oil because it allowed me to once again fill that hole that Eric might be in the earlier games while Eric is getting set up, and also still advance my game in terms of getting me economy. And I had emergency caches as well. I would have liked to upgrade them, but I think there were other priority upgrades. I had overpowers, and what was, I think, 2 inspiring presences, but cut down to 1. I just think I didn't need them. You didn't really take any damage once you were set up. The thing that kind of blew my mind, Dream Eaters is an easier campaign on the treachery side, but like, we weren't failing tests on this side at a certain point. I also had 2 Luckies, which I rarely played. I was holding 2 Luckies I almost said spoilers. I'll say it anyway. I was holding these 2 cards the entire final scenario.
Really?
Yeah, I had them in my hand. That's why I was taking tests like a little like laissez-faire.
Yeah.
And I never needed them.
No, you didn't.
Nope. And then I got my 3 cheeky one-ofs. Surgical kit as a way to heal my my wounded bystander, who I ultimately just ignored. I think I healed him actually with my Elder Sign in the first scenario.
You did.
Yeah. I have Steady-Handed. I wanted to try it out here. I think it works well with Elders, but it was only in the last scenario. I never really saw it do anything. And then a Spirit of Humanity, which I added pretty late as well, but it was very powerful when I had it out on the first turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did a lot of good stuff.
It was great.
I think these decks worked really well together. I think if either side sucked a little bit, we would have had a very rough campaign. But I think both decks actually synergized well with each other, not in the terms of like actual deck synergy, but rather in just like what the decks needed to do to like be good.
Yeah, tempo and speed. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's that. Do you have any investigators you want to play for your next one?
Yeah, I want to play a Yithian.
You can't play a Yithian. That's against the rules.
I can't.
You can't play a Yithian. You can't.
It's got a power.
No, you can't play a Yithian. You can't.
I'll take only neutrals.
You can't play a Yithian. Maybe one day, but I can't let you break the rules for a blind run. It goes against my very nature.
No, I'm excited to go through all the investigators now, having experienced a strong character and having experienced a character I don't hear people say is good or bad.
No, most people say Charlie's good.
Okay, good.
Charlie is the general sentiment of Charlie is he's takes time to set up, but when he does, he's very good.
Yeah, wow.
And he's very fragile on the mulligan.
I loved him.
Yeah, he's very good.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure who I'll play next. Maybe I'll play Vincent Lee.
Oh, could you imagine? I'll play Charlie.
Yeah.
We just run the same investigators every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited to see who it's going to be because it's going to be fun. I said this in the video. I'll say it again here. It's going to be a while till we see our next playthrough together. We have some other stuff coming out. But worry not, Eric will return to the channel, and Eric will also show up in some list videos and some other stuff. Basically, now that we're like... The problem is that campaigns and scenarios get longer. So we can't record as much in one day, which means that like we can't record other stuff. So we're going to be able to catch up on that a little bit, which is going to be really nice. But we'll see you all very soon. Next Monday, we're going to have the final episode of Weaver of the Cosmos. And then after that, we're going to have Eric's thoughts on Dream Eaters, which I'm excited to hear. I have some ideas, but we're going to find out. See you all very soon. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. And as always, GG's.